Hello, and welcome to the Community IT Innovators Technology Topics Podcast, where we discuss nonprofit technology, cybersecurity, tech project implementation, strategic planning, and nonprofit IT careers. Find us at communityit.com. Thank you for joining this Community IT Podcast Part 2. You can find Part 1 in your podcast feed if you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining the Nonprofit Learning Lab for today's workshop. And without further ado, I will now hand it over to you, Matt and Carolyn.
Thanks, Tammy. Welcome, everyone, to the Community IT Innovators webinar on 10 free security tools for nonprofits.
My name is Matthew Eshleman, and I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Community IT.
And my name is Carolyn Woodard. I'm in charge of outreach at Community IT, and I'm going to be helping Matt today and monitoring the chat. So I think now we are going to turn to technology and talk about some more tools. We haven't got to 10 yet, so it's time. I'll be putting them in the chat as well.
All right. So now we're talking a little bit about technology tools. We can have some conversation about keeping computers up to date. It doesn't sound that exciting, but keeping your computers up to date with both operating level system patches and application patches is a foundational element of cybersecurity control. So if you are a Windows user, Microsoft has made a shift in their patching policy. So again, if you're Windows 10, they're kind of automatically pushing down those patches to you and installing them in the background. So it's important for folks to be rebooting their computers, ideally once a week, so that those patches can have a chance to be applied and applied correctly. So again, in Windows, just make sure that you're restarting your computer weekly, and that should take care of the operating system patches. If you're a Mac user, and you go to System Preferences and check for updates. Again, Mac OS, the patching is really end user centric. So again, check for those updates and restart your computer weekly to make sure that they have a chance to be applied. So that's for operating system. For third-party patching, so again, that would be third-party applications, like Chrome, like Adobe, maybe some additional add-in tools. A lot of them have now moved to a kind of a self-updater model. So that's been great. If you're responsible for the IT at a larger organization, it may be helpful to have some sort of an automated tool to make sure that it's not just the operating system level patches that are being installed, but all those third-party applications as well. So there's a couple of tools out there. So Ninite is a very popular one. There's a free version of that, and you can kind of run it on a computer. It'll scan for all the applications that are installed there and identify which of them need to have updates. If you're, again, not a free, but on the pro version, or there's a kind of an enterprise level that allows you to automate a lot of that. And so if you're at a larger organization, that may be a great tool. Chocolatey is another so-called kind of package manager, and again, provides a free way to kind of manage and update applications from a centralized way. So again, those are some great tools to make sure that not just your operating system is patched, but also the third-party applications are patched as well. Another, so now that we've talked about, so your operating system is patched, that's a pretty straightforward process. Third-party applications are patched. Now you can maybe look at some vulnerability scanning. And so vulnerability scanning is a process where you can get a third-party application to kind of scan your computers, your public web resources, and it will report back, if it detects that anything has not been updated. So this is a great way to check and confirm that the patching process that you think is in place is actually working. So there are a couple of different options out there. Qualys, which is a kind of really well-regarded vendor for this, does make a free scan version. It has kind of a limited scope, but is a great way if you're just want some independent checks on kind of the quality of your patching and management systems. The Qualys tool is available there, so freescan.qualys.com, and that will give you some insight in terms of are my computers patched and up to date? Are my servers patched and up to date? It'll even look for, network firewall. That kind of information is able to query and report on that level of insight as well. So again, it's important to patch your systems, and it's important to confirm and make sure that that patching is actually happening. And as we talked about kind of at the very beginning, email is a huge source of attacks. I mean, that's kind of the most common attack vector is going to be through email, and there's a lot of great paid security tools that are available to help block spam, remove business email compromised messages, all of that. So there are great paid tools that can kind of proactively block that. If you're trying to build a case or just want some additional insight about, if you need this tool, Barracuda makes an email threat scanning tool where you can actually sign up, delegate some permission, and the Barracuda system will actually scan your Office 365 environment and identify if you have malicious messages that are already in your Office 365 environment. So here in this report that we can see delivered, it will identify if there are fraudulent messages, maybe if there's spear phishing that's already been delivered. It will surface those messages that you can get some additional information on. So again, a really great tool to provide some of that reporting and analysis to make sure that again, the email tools that you currently have in place are doing the job that you expected to, and just give some good insight and reporting to identify if there have been any threats that are kind of already made its way through. So again, the Barracuda email scan is a great free resource as a way to just scan that Office 365 environment to make sure that your email inbox is clean. All right, I think we've got a bonus recommendation here. Did want to highlight there are some additional free tools that vendors like Microsoft make available, particularly for organizations that are in kind of like the democracy and journalism space. So again, if you find yourself in that category, there are some additional security tools that Microsoft will make available called the Defending Democracy Program. So I think it goes by the term Account Guard. So this is, turns on some additional security options within Office 365 and then gives you access to their additional, kind of heightened security planning and response team for making sure that your organization is well protected. And you've got maybe some additional set of tools and monitoring available from Microsoft. So again, that's a free resource that Microsoft provides to organizations that are in that, what they call the Defending Democracy space. So we've talked a lot about free tools, and I think you can certainly do a lot with free. But I will say, for a lot of these tools, there's a limit to what you can get out of the free platform. And so I think there's certainly a couple things if you've done the free stuff and you're ready to move forward and kind of take the next step. I think there's a couple things that are really worth paying for. So one is formalized security awareness training. Again, you can do a lot for free. You can, if you're an internal person, you can kind of run and provide education to your staff. I think that's great. I would maybe look for security awareness training. It's being included with a lot of different service offerings now. So again, maybe your HR system is including some training libraries as part of an added module that they're throwing in. So that's something that we're seeing quite a bit. I think you want to make sure that the cybersecurity training is really good and relevant so that you can kind of get your staff engaged, and it's not something that people just kind of pass off and ignore because it's not done very well. I do think security awareness training is something that it is worth paying for because you get such a good return on investment from that. We use KnowBe4. It's very well regarded. It's not that expensive, and we see results. And so this is from their data that they generate from, I think they have like 6 million customers or mailboxes that they're protecting or providing training for. And the thing that I like about some of these paid training programs is that you can see progress over time in terms of who's clicking on emails. So you can do some test phishing out of the tool where messages are delivered in inboxes, you can see which of your staff are opening messages, which of your staff are clicking on them, and then it combines that with an online learning management system where you can assign trainings, gauge progress, and then provide follow-up as it's needed. So again, we see this mirrored in the clients that we're working with, where, from initial baseline phishing campaign, we may see, 20 to 30% of messages get clicked. And then typically over time, after about a year or so, that falls into the low single-digit percentage points. So it really is effective, and you can measure the progress over time. Really great resource, and not that expensive, totally worth it. And again, that reportability is just really handy, so that you can get some feedback. So it's not just the IT person sharing at a staff meeting once a year, but you can really see some measurable progress over time.
I can definitely say, having done KnowBe4 and clicked on the wrong, you get an email from KnowBe4 and it's got a little suspicious, like you should be suspicious of it. And of course I clicked on it. And then it takes you right to, it's like immediate, you're like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. And then it takes you immediately to like what you should have done, how you can check, how you can hover over to see, look for misspellings and stuff like that. So I just found it incredibly effective for me personally. That fit my style of being able to learn about it in a positive way. I wanted to just jump in quickly and say we're going to leave a little bit of time at the end for questions. So we're getting a couple now, but if you have questions for Matt, we're going to save them for the end, but go ahead and put them in the Q&A feature now so that we'll be able to get to them.
Great. Another tool I think that's really important to pay for, and it's actually a follow-up on that email scanner tool, is business email compromise protection. So again, some of that may seem a little jargony, so I will define. So spam is just kind of any type of unwanted email. We all know it. We're all familiar with it. Kind of offensive emails, ads for Viagra, sales junk, just kind of stuff that's just unwanted. Like it's coming, who it's coming from, but it's not something you're interested in. It's kind of easily ignored. And so that's how I quantify or characterize spam. Business email compromise is kind of a little bit different. Also, kind of spear phishing is kind of a similar term, where the sender of the email is obfuscating who they are, and they're trying to appear like somebody else. Again, like your executive director emailing a staff person saying, hey, can you do something for me real quick, right? Or, hey, I need you to buy some gift cards. Can you do this, or call me back on this number, right? So that is when the name of the sender is often obfuscated. And so they're disguising who they are and trying to get you to take some action. It's really hard for anti-spam solutions, kind of the traditional anti-spam solutions, to block this stuff because there's just not that much content to go on. And so it can be very difficult. If you have spam protection, it's been set up for a long time, it's going to miss all of this stuff because it just hasn't been updated, or it's not designed to protect against those very short transactional email messages. So there are security tools that are built to identify and block this. They typically work a little bit differently. Whereas regular spam filters are, kind of email flows through them, these business email compromise protection tools like Barracuda, Sentinel, work by kind of connecting into the back end of your email system and scanning email after it's delivered. And so they're able, through some of their AI work, to analyze messages, determine intent. That tool can maybe figure out that the sender is different, the actual reply email address is different from the sender, and provide some additional insight. And it's great because it can then remove messages from your inbox after it's delivered. So again, this is a very helpful and powerful tool in combating these business email compromise attacks. And I find organizations, again, if they have to pick between the two, they'll often choose to pay for this type of protection because people get a lot more upset and frustrated whenever they're getting email that looks like it's coming from their executive director or looks like they're coming from their finance department. And so if they can block and remove that, they'll prioritize that over trying to reduce the amount of junk spam messages that people get in their inbox. So again, business email compromise protection or spear phishing protection, I think is something that's worth spending money on, again, because so many attacks originate via email. it's important to have the best type of protection you can. If you're going to make a cybersecurity investment, after MFA, email protection is a great place to look at spending that money. And then I will say, I think assessments are actually worth spending money on as well. So I think you can learn a lot. There's a lot of free assessment tools. I already talked about a couple here. There's probably a 5-minute survey tool that you can go through, on our website that will give some immediate feedback. There's the offer to do the free NIST assessment. Again, about a 30 to 45-minute investment of time on your part to go through the survey, to answer all the questions, gives you a nice report back. Those are great kind of survey-driven tools to give you some insight in terms of what your organization should do next. But I think there's certainly no substitute from somebody actually, looking under the hood at your organization's IT configurations and policies and procedures and identifying where those gaps exist. So again, if you've already done the fundamentals, right? If you've already implemented multi-factor authentication, you've already done security awareness training, you've already, maybe done some IT policy work, that's where you really should start. You don't need an assessment to tell you that. But if you've done the basics and you're really looking on how can we continue to improve our organization's policy and kind of practices around cybersecurity, having in an outside vendor who's kind of specialized and focuses on cybersecurity controls can be a great way to help make sure that you kind of continue to make sure that your bases are covered and then move to a more mature level when it comes to implementing cybersecurity protection. So again, I think getting an independent assessment is a great way to provide a lot of value. I would certainly do this before, organizations maybe invest in pen testing. I think pen testing, again, can be helpful, but you really need to make sure you've invested a lot in your cybersecurity controls before that sort of assessment or, that sort of service is really worth it. So again, free tool, helpful. Once that's done, you can kind of move up the chain and continue to improve your controls.
We said we'd make sure everyone knew all of the lingo. So can you just tell us what pen testing is?
Yes. So pen testing, short for penetration testing. And so that is a kind of a tool or a system of approach where an organization will actually kind of pretend or act like the bad guy and try to hack your system. So again, they will, maybe send emails to your staff to try to get them to click on things. They'll actually, look at your website and try to do some exploits. And so again, it's a mock adversarial engagement where you're paying somebody or a firm to kind of do some of that proactive scanning, proactive hacking, so that they can uncover weaknesses for your organization to identify and protect, so that whenever the real bad guys come, you've had a chance to identify and implement some of those protections.
And I think pen testing tends to be a lot more expensive. Am I wrong in thinking that? And also more necessary for larger organizations, or if you are working in a policy area where you have specific concerns, like an advocacy area, or in maybe some other countries where you're thinking that there may be that kind of spying or persistent threat that you'd want to invest in the pen testing, perhaps.
Yeah, I would say, penetration testing, I think, depending on the size of the organization, again, the answer is it often depends, but that's going to be, something that's like at least a $10,000 engagement, right? So kind of starting at 10,000 and going up kind of quickly from there. So again, it's very expensive and maybe a requirement, again, if you're an organization that needs to follow, PCI compliance, you process a lot of credit card information, you have a lot of donor information, those are areas where it may be relevant and worthwhile to, or maybe even required to do penetration testing. But if you're doing that as like, hey, we have some money to spend on cybersecurity, where should we spend it? That would be one of the last things that I would do. Invest in the basics, get a roadmap, make sure that these basic controls are in place, and then you may get value out of the pen test.
I think you said also, maybe a different time, that once you've had a security breach, you're then on the list of more likely to have more. Not because you were doing anything, particularly wrong, but once it's known out there that you had a problem, then, you get on these websites and other people are going to try and attack as well. So maybe that would be another consideration. We're doing great on time. I want to make sure that we go to the Q&A now. So on this slide, you see we have Matt's contact information, and we have a couple of questions that came in. So I'm going to go through them in order. We have a question from Carolina who wonders, do you have a recommendation for email threat scanning for Gmail?
Yes. So most of the tools will do email threat scanning for Office 365. I think they have a bit more of an open API that allows them to do that. There are some for Google. The name is escaping me right now. If you send me an email, I will reply with it, or if I think about it, by the end of the webinar, I will share that. But there are, again, so this is one area where, if you have a spam filter, the way that works, you're kind of just sending your email through there, and then they can deliver it, whether you're in Google or whether you're in Office 365. These, business email compromise tools, again, typically work through APIs, and so most of the work is around Office 365. So there's a lot of solutions there, and then there are less solutions available for Google, but they do exist, and I'll think about. I'll have to get that list over.
Okay, so the next question is, do you have a recommendation for free is great or paid is okay for password managers for teams and staff? I'm sorry, the person who asked this, Ben, I'm not sure if that's for Teams, the platform, or for a team within your
Teams, a group, yeah, as a group, yes. So I think the kind of the password journey that many organizations are on are step one, right? No password management, or using the browser or that kind of thing, which is where we all start. The next step would be getting a password manager maybe as a one-on-one, and then moving up to kind of team-based password managers. I think there are popular tools, again, like Dashlane. I like LastPass personally, and there are team-based subscriptions where, again, for your organization, you can buy and provide password managers for staff as a kind of a secure way to manage and deal with all of those unique passwords that you need for every, for all these different sites. All right, you've got 150 different sites that you need to log into throughout the course of your work week. And it's important to have a good way to generate and manage all of those passwords without reusing anything. So yeah, so I think LastPass is a great tool for that.
Something like that. Ben, it was Ben who asked the question, and he clarified Teams as a group, not Microsoft Teams, the platform. I might be opening a can of worms here, but I know that you've talked about single sign-on in the past. That's something that's more organization wide. You wouldn't have that just for a team to access all of their applications that they need.
Yeah, that's correct. So again, a password manager is great for storing and providing passwords to kind of all these discrete websites. Again, if you're part of a larger organization, or maybe have a little bit more sophistication, kind of the next tier up would be called single sign-on. So instead of having 10 usernames and 10 passwords for 10 different websites, you would have one username and one password for those 10 websites. And so the security thinking there is that instead of kind of protecting all those different accounts equally and like managing them discreetly, you're able to provide more support and management around that one credential that then provides access to all those different websites through some security technology called SAML is typically the mechanism. And that there's a whole bunch of technical stuff that we could geek out about related to that. But the kind of the security benefit of single sign-on is that you get much better reporting and analytics from like kind of gateway that you're putting up than you are trying to manage like 10 different accounts at 10 different websites. And obviously that increases exponentially as you add more people and more websites to the security profile.
I think if you want to geek out with Matt, you need to get in touch with him. We have another question, which is any recommendations for log aggregation and analysis tools? We worry that if we had a breach, we would never know or have records to hand over to law enforcement or security professionals. So I did already put in the chat, and in response to that question, the Lockton guide for cyber Insurance, which has it's a free download, and it's kind of adjacent to what we were talking about, but it has a lot of the controls and kind of how to think about insurance. And then as part of that insurance process, if you had a breach, what you would do next. And I can also recommend our webinar that we did on that in August, which I'll drop that as well. But go ahead, Matt.
Yes, I think that is a great question. I think whoever asked that, I think shows, kind of a growing awareness of kind of just all the different systems that are out there that would need to be considered kind of if and when you do have to respond to a breach. So, I would say just kind of in general, most systems will provide, maybe a week or two or maybe up to 30 days of logging right within a platform. And so in the event of a security incident, your IT provider or the breach response person are going to kind of look in those logs, and unless you've got a unified system in place, they have to look in all these different places to try to piece together, well, wait, how did this email come in, and then this person clicked on it, and then it was a virus on this computer, and then it spread to this other system. And so if you have all these disconnected systems, it can be very difficult, if not impossible, to try to really piece something together. So again, there is a number of different solutions that are called security information and event management tools that are geared towards basically receiving all this log data so that you can, again, retain it and search it and analyze it. So they end up, again, being expensive, right? If you're asking questions about log aggregation, that I think shows a certain degree of maturity as an organization. There are some, kind of open source tools that are on the lower cost side, but if you're making the investment in a SIM tool, it's important, I think, to understand your requirements, and it's probably going to be, part of a strategic investment for the organization, and you would kind of go through and kind of figure out what your requirements are and find a vendor that would match up with that. Again, that's probably in the $10 to $50 kind of per month per user kind of cost range, and so again can be relatively expensive, but again, if you're depending on the type of organization that you work in, may be a requirement.
I think we have the learning objectives. I want to just go back quickly over them. I always like to, kind of wind up an hour of having such a great conversation with you, Matt, about all of this, that I think really you did a great job, of course, covering the cybersecurity landscape for nonprofits, talking about cybersecurity readiness. We have that free download with the report, the 10, I think it was more than 10 free security tools, and a couple of those that you could pay for, and then depending on what the kind of investment you wanted to make, what you would do next, how to get in touch with you if you need an assessment or that free tool, or just want to geek out, understanding the role of executives and staffs to manage basic security, even when you're not the IT person, although I get a sense that we had some IT people on this webinar, but I hope that if you are not, totally up on all of the lingo and in charge of this at your nonprofit, that we gave you some things to think about and some tools to investigate. Of course, you can always get back in touch with us. And that's the last point of the learning objectives, knowing where to go for additional resources on nonprofit cybersecurity. So I think that's it for us. Let me drop your email in the chat here. And then I don't know, Tammy, if you wanted to wrap it up for Nonprofit Learning Lab.
Yes, thank you, Matt and Carolyn. This workshop has now come to a close. If you are interested in receiving the recordings and materials from today's free webinar, you can visit our free webinars page on the Nonprofit Learning Lab website, or you can send us an email at program@nonprofitlearninglab.org. Thank you so much for participating. And again, thank you, Matt and Carolyn, for educating our community.
Thank you for joining this Community IT Podcast Part 2. You can find Part 1 in your podcast feed if you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Community IT does these free webinars and podcasts for our community, and we love sharing our knowledge and experience. If you have more questions or are having trouble with your IT at your nonprofit, please get in touch with us on our website, www.communityit.com, so we can start a conversation or schedule an assessment. Downloading any of our free resources there will get you signed up for our webinar reminders, and you can attend our next webinar in real time and ask our experts your own questions. If you love podcasts, please subscribe and leave us a rating to help others find this leadership resource for nonprofits.